Carl Jung believed that money was never just a practical matter, but a powerful psychological archetype loaded with unconscious shadows and projections that reveal the deepest fears and desires of the human psyche. And his analysis of how the four rarest personality types relate to money exposes profound truths about power, purpose, and the hidden forces that drive financial behavior. Before we dive into this revolutionary understanding of how INTJ, INFJ, INTP, and INFP personalities unconsciously sabotage or empower their financial lives through archetypal patterns they don't even recognize, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button, because what you're about to learn will transform how you understand the psychological relationship between personality and prosperity. Jung discovered that money functions as what he called a psychological mirror, reflecting not just our practical needs, but our deepest unconscious complexes, fears, and desires. For the four introverted intuitive types, money becomes a particularly complex archetypal symbol because these personalities operate primarily in the realm of ideas, meanings, and future possibilities rather than immediate material concerns. But Jung understood that this very detachment from material reality creates unique psychological dynamics around money that can either become sources of profound limitation or extraordinary power, depending on how consciously these types approach their financial shadows. The INTJ personality, according to Jung's archetypal analysis, relates to money through what he called the strategic power archetype. For INTJs, money is never just currency. It's a tool for independence, control, and the ability to manifest their long-term visions without depending on others' approval or support. Jung recognized that INTJs unconsciously view money as strategic power because their dominant function, introverted intuition, is constantly perceiving future possibilities and potential obstacles. Money represents the practical power to remove obstacles and create the conditions necessary for their visions to become reality. When an INTJ thinks about money, they're not thinking about immediate pleasures or status symbols. They're thinking about freedom from external control, the ability to pursue their projects without interference, and the security that comes from being able to handle any future challenge or opportunity that might arise. This strategic relationship with money gives INTJs several natural advantages. They're excellent long-term planners, they can delay gratification for future gains, and they're naturally motivated to create multiple income streams and build substantial reserves because they understand that money equals strategic options. But Jung also identified the shadow side of this archetypal relationship. The INTJ's desire for financial control can become an obsession with domination that isolates them from others and transforms money from a tool of freedom into a prison of isolation. The shadow manifests when INTJs begin to use money as a way to avoid vulnerability and interdependence with others. They might accumulate wealth not for the positive goal of manifesting their visions, but for the negative goal of never having to depend on anyone else for anything. This can lead to what Jung called strategic hoarding, where the INTJ becomes so focused on building financial fortresses that they lose sight of the original purposes that money was supposed to serve. They might have substantial wealth, but feel emotionally impoverished because they've used money to create distance from others rather than connection to their authentic goals. Jung observed that INTJs often struggle with what he called prosperity guilt, feeling uncomfortable with visible wealth because they fear it will make them targets for others' manipulation or resentment. This can lead to a pattern where they accumulate wealth secretly while maintaining modest external appearances. The path to integration for INTJs, according to Jung, involves learning to use money as a tool for authentic vision manifestation rather than control and domination. When INTJs connect their financial strategies to their genuine desire to contribute something meaningful to the world, money becomes a force for creation rather than isolation. The INFJ personality relates to money through what Jung called the sacred purpose archetype. For INFJs, money carries intense moral and spiritual significance, representing either a tool for serving higher purposes or a corrupting force that distances them from their authentic values. Jung recognized that INFJs experience what he called the money paradox, simultaneously viewing money as spiritually suspect while recognizing its necessity for manifesting their idealistic visions. This creates a complex psychological relationship where money becomes both desired and feared. INFJs often unconsciously believe that wanting money is somehow spiritually impure or selfish, which creates internal conflict when they need financial resources to pursue their humanitarian goals or creative visions. They might feel guilty about financial success while simultaneously resenting their lack of resources to help others or pursue meaningful work. Jung observed that INFJs tend to have an all-or-nothing relationship with money, either rejecting it completely in favor of spiritual pursuits or becoming intensely focused on accumulating resources for idealistic purposes. They struggle to find a balanced, practical relationship with money that honors both their spiritual values and their material needs. The shadow side of the INFJ money archetype manifests as what Jung called martyrdom through poverty. INFJs might unconsciously maintain financial struggle as a way of proving their spiritual purity or demonstrating their commitment to higher values over material concerns. This martyrdom pattern can become self-destructive when INFJs sacrifice their own financial well-being to such an extent that they become unable to help others or pursue their meaningful work. They might give away money they need for their own security or refuse opportunities for financial growth because they've unconsciously equated poverty with virtue. Jung also identified another shadow pattern in INFJs, savior complex spending, where they use money compulsively to rescue others or support causes, often beyond their means, and sometimes enabling dependency rather than genuine help. The path to integration for INFJs involves what Jung called sacred materialism, learning to view money as a spiritual tool that can be used consciously to manifest their values in the material world. When INFJs understand that financial abundance can actually enhance their ability to serve others and pursue meaningful work, they can release the guilt and develop a healthy relationship with prosperity. The INTP personality relates to money through what Jung called the conceptual puzzle archetype. For INTPs, money is fascinating as an abstract system to be understood, but often feels irrelevant to their core interests and motivations. Jung recognized that INTPs approach money with the same intellectual curiosity they bring to any complex system. They might become fascinated by economic theories, investment strategies, or financial markets as intellectual puzzles, but struggle to apply this understanding to their own practical financial lives. INTPs often have sophisticated theoretical understanding of money and economics, but paradoxically, poor personal financial management. They might be able to explain complex economic principles while forgetting to pay their bills or failing to pursue obvious opportunities for financial improvement. Jung observed that INTPs tend to view money as somehow beneath their intellectual interests, preferring to focus on ideas and theories rather than practical material concerns. This can create a pattern where they remain financially dependent on others or struggle with basic financial responsibilities. The shadow side of the INTP money archetype manifests as what Jung called intellectual superiority over materialism. INTPs might unconsciously maintain financial struggle as a way of proving that they're above materialistic concerns, viewing financial success as somehow intellectually or morally inferior. This shadow can lead to what Jung called procrastination poverty, where INTPs avoid financial opportunities or responsibilities because they find them boring, beneath their abilities, or incompatible with their self-image as intellectual beings focused on higher pursuits. Another shadow pattern Jung identified is analysis paralysis around money, where INTPs become so focused on understanding all the variables and possibilities that they never take practical action to improve their financial situation. The path to integration for INTPs involves what Jung called practical intellectualism, learning to apply their analytical abilities to their own financial lives and recognizing that financial stability can actually enhance their ability to pursue intellectual interests without external pressures or dependencies. The INFP personality relates to money through what Jung called the authentic values archetype. For INFPs, money must be connected to personal meaning and authentic self-expression, or it becomes a source of internal conflict and resistance. Jung recognized that INFPs have perhaps the most complex relationship with money of all the types, because they need their financial activities to align perfectly with their personal values and sense of authentic identity. Money that comes from work or activities that contradict their values feels psychologically toxic to INFPs. INFPs often struggle financially, not because they lack ability or intelligence, but because they unconsciously reject opportunities that don't align with their authentic self-expression. They might turn down lucrative jobs, avoid certain industries, or sabotage financial success if it requires them to compromise their values or authentic identity. Jung observed that INFPs can be extraordinarily successful financially when they find ways to monetize their authentic passions and values, but they struggle immensely when forced to pursue money through activities that feel inauthentic or meaningless to them. The shadow side of the INFP money archetype manifests as what Jung called purity perfectionism around money. INFPs might maintain financial struggle because they can't find perfectly pure ways to earn money that align completely with all their values and ideals. This purity perfectionism can lead to what Jung called values martyrdom, where INFPs sacrifice their financial well-being rather than engage in any activity that feels even slightly compromising to their authentic self-expression. Another shadow pattern Jung identified is practical rule rebellion, where INFPs unconsciously reject basic financial principles and practical money management because these feel like external impositions on their authentic self-expression. INFPs might avoid budgeting, ignore financial planning, or resist conventional financial advice because they experience these practical requirements as threats to their spontaneity and authentic living. The path to integration for INFPs involves what Jung called authentic prosperity, learning to create financial abundance through activities that genuinely express their values and authentic identity, while also developing practical skills that support, rather than compromise, their authentic self-expression. But Jung's most profound insight about these four types and money was his recognition that their financial struggles often stem from unconscious archetypal conflicts rather than practical limitations. Each type carries unconscious beliefs about money that create self-sabotaging patterns. Jung identified several universal money shadows that affect all four types. The first is what he called the spiritual materialism split, the unconscious belief that spiritual or intellectual development is incompatible with material success. All four types can fall into this shadow, believing that pursuing money will somehow corrupt their authentic nature or compromise their higher values. This creates internal conflict where they simultaneously need money for practical reasons while unconsciously rejecting it for psychological reasons. The second universal shadow Jung identified is success unworthiness, the unconscious belief that they don't deserve financial abundance because they're different from mainstream society or because their gifts are too abstract or unusual to have material value. These types often undervalue their unique contributions and struggle to charge appropriately for their services or pursue opportunities that match their actual capabilities and value. The third universal shadow is what Jung called complexity addiction in money matters, where these types make financial decisions unnecessarily complicated because complexity feels more intellectually satisfying than simple practical approaches. They might avoid straightforward financial strategies in favor of complex theories or unusual approaches that appeal to their need for intellectual stimulation, but don't necessarily produce better financial results. Jung also identified the transformational potential that emerges when these four types integrate their money shadows and align their financial activities with their authentic nature and values. When INTJs learn to use money as a tool for manifesting their visions rather than controlling others, they can create extraordinary wealth while maintaining their integrity and contributing meaningfully to the world. When INFJs resolve their spiritual material split and embrace what Jung called sacred materialism, they can create financial abundance that enhances rather than compromises their ability to serve others and pursue meaningful work. When INTPs apply their analytical abilities to their own financial lives and recognize money as an interesting system worthy of their intellectual attention, they can achieve financial stability that supports their intellectual pursuits. When INFPs connect their financial activities to their authentic values and self-expression, they can create prosperity that feels deeply satisfying and meaningful rather than compromising or inauthentic. Jung believed that these four types have unique potential for what he called conscious wealth creation, financial success that emerges from authentic self-expression rather than external conformity or manipulation. But this conscious wealth creation requires what Jung called shadow integration around money, honestly examining and transforming the unconscious beliefs and patterns that create financial limitation. The first step in this integration process is recognizing that money is not inherently spiritual or unspiritual, meaningful or meaningless, pure or impure. Money is simply a tool that takes on the psychological significance we project onto it. The second step is identifying the specific shadow patterns that create financial limitation. Each type needs to honestly examine how their unconscious beliefs about money might be creating self-sabotaging behaviors. The third step is developing what Jung called practical idealism, learning to pursue financial goals through methods that align with authentic values while also acknowledging practical realities and requirements. The fourth step is creating what Jung called integrated financial identity, where financial activities become expressions of authentic self rather than compromises or necessary evils. Jung's ultimate vision for these four types was that they could become what he called conscious wealth creators, individuals who generate financial abundance through authentic self-expression while using their resources to contribute meaningfully to the world. This conscious wealth creation doesn't require compromising values or authentic identity, but it does require integrating shadow patterns and developing practical skills that support rather than undermine authentic self-expression. Jung believed that when these four types achieve this integration, they become powerful forces for positive change in the world because they combine financial resources with authentic values, practical capabilities with meaningful purposes, and material success with spiritual integrity. The key insight from Jung's analysis is that financial success for these types is not about adopting conventional strategies or compromising authentic identity, but about finding ways to monetize their unique gifts while maintaining integrity and contributing to something larger than themselves. When INTJs, INFJs, INTPs, and INFPs learn to work with rather than against their natural psychological patterns around money, they can achieve both financial abundance and authentic self-expression, creating what Jung called integrated prosperity that serves both personal fulfillment and collective good. If this video has helped you understand your unconscious relationship with money and how to transform financial limitations into conscious abundance, subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Share in the comments which money archetype resonates most with your experience. And remember that financial struggle is often a symptom of unconscious psychological patterns rather than practical limitations. Jung's insights show us that true prosperity comes from aligning our financial activities with our authentic nature, rather than fighting against our psychological design.